police officer see what's on your phone? The simple answer is no. The only way a police officer is getting into your phone is either he has a search warrant or you give him consent.
If a police officer ever asks for your phone or laptop, that moment defines who stays in control, you or them. Because once your device leaves your hands, your privacy, identity, and freedom go with it. Today, I'll show you exactly what to say to stay protected and in power. Let's get into the tips. Tip number 1, never voluntarily hand over a device without a warrant or a clear legal basis. The problem? Police will often ask for your phone, laptop, or even your cloud credentials voluntarily. They might say, "Can we just take a quick look?" Or, "If you've got nothing to hide, you won't mind showing us." That's psychological pressure, not a lawful demand.
But it's actually one of the riskiest things you can do. Your texts, your photos, your browser history, it's all evidence now. And it's not just what they see, it's how they interpret it.
Under the Fourth Amendment, the government cannot conduct unreasonable searches or seizures. Your device is an extension of your mind. It contains personal communications, browsing history, medical data, and biometric information. Courts recognize this. In fact, the Supreme Court in Riley v. California 2014 held that police generally need a warrant to search a phone, even if you're arrested. But here's what most people miss. If you hand over your phone voluntarily, that protection evaporates. You've just consented to the search, and consent is one of the biggest exceptions to the Fourth Amendment. Once given, it's extremely hard to walk back. The solution: if an officer asks for your device, calmly say, "I do not consent to any searches or seizures." You're not being rude. You're invoking a constitutional right. If they insist, ask, "Do you have a warrant?" If they say yes, ask to see it physically. A warrant must: 1. It is signed by a judge. 2. Specifically describe what is being searched, e.g. an iPhone 14 with serial number X and what they're looking for, e.g. evidence related to theft case 1345. 3. It must be based on probable cause, supported by sworn statements. If any of those are missing, the warrant is invalid. Do not resist physically. Simply state your objection for the record. That verbal statement is crucial because it preserves your right to challenge the search later in court. Why it works. Judges take the issue of consent very seriously. If you never gave consent and the police lacked a valid warrant, your attorney can later move to suppress all evidence from that search. That's what we call the exclusionary rule. If the search was illegal, the evidence is tainted and can't be used. In practice, this has saved countless cases, but it only works if you clearly and calmly assert your lack of consent. The biggest mistake people make is hesitating or saying something like, "Yeah, sure, I guess." That one word, "sure," can cost you your privacy. Tip number 2, understand the difference between seizing and searching. The problem: most people think that if the police take their device, they automatically have the right to open it. That's not true. Legally, seizure and search are two separate actions under the Fourth Amendment. A seizure is when the government takes possession of your property. A search is when they actually examine the contents of that property. Why does that matter? Because police can temporarily seize a device without a warrant under certain conditions, but they can't search it without one.
Law enforcement cannot seize a cell phone or other property until they can obtain a warrant. And doing so is a violation of the Fourth Amendment.
Let's break that down. If an officer believes your phone contains evidence of a crime and there's a risk that evidence could be deleted, they can seize it under what's called exigent circumstances. For example, if they have probable cause to believe you were texting while committing a crime, or they see you trying to delete data in real time, they can take the phone to preserve it. But that doesn't mean they can open it, unlock it, or scroll through it. For that, they still need a warrant. The solution: if police say they're taking your device for evidence, calmly clarify, "I understand you're seizing it. I do not consent to any search of its contents." This distinction seems minor, but it is legally powerful. It creates a paper trail of non-consent. When your lawyer challenges the search later, that statement can make the difference between your private data being admitted as evidence or thrown out entirely. And one more thing: never give them your passcode, PIN, or face fingerprint unlock. In many states, you have a Fifth Amendment right not to provide self-incriminating information. Here's the key difference. A passcode is protected because it's testimonial. It reveals what you know. But a fingerprint or face scan is considered physical evidence, like a key, and may not be protected in all jurisdictions. That means if you unlock your device with biometrics, police could legally compel you to do it. The smart move? Disable biometric unlocks before any high-risk situation and rely solely on a passcode. Why it works? By separating the concept of seizure and search, you slow down the process and force law enforcement to follow proper procedure. You're not obstructing, you're asserting due process. That time gap often gives your lawyer a window to file motions or negotiate conditions for data access, especially in white-collar or digital evidence cases. Think of it like this. The moment you say, "I do not consent to any search," you've drawn a bright legal line. Everything beyond that point requires judicial approval. Never hand over your device voluntarily unless a valid warrant is presented. Understand that seizure doesn't mean search, and protect your digital keys, because the seizure isn't the end. It's the beginning of the real legal battle. Tip number 3, know what happens behind the scenes. Once police have your device, the police have your device now. Maybe they took your phone during an arrest, maybe they showed up with a warrant, or maybe they just grabbed it because they said it contained evidence. Here's what most people don't realize. Once your device leaves your hands, it enters a completely different world. A world of forensic labs, data imaging, and legal technicalities that can either protect you or destroy your privacy. The problem: most people think police just look through their phone like you would, scrolling through apps, messages, or photos. That's not how it works.
Portable, la police peut pirater n'importe quel téléphone portable qu'elle souhaite.
iPhone 14 Pro Max.
Cela leur prendra du temps si vous mettez la main sur ce téléphone et que vous pensez qu'ils ne peuvent pas y accéder.
Once law enforcement has a device, especially in serious investigations, it's typically handed over to a digital forensics unit. These are specialized teams with tools that can extract, copy, and analyze every piece of data from your device, even deleted files, cache fragments, or partially overwritten data. The first step is something called a forensic image, a complete bit-by-bit copy of your device's memory. They don't work directly on your actual phone. They make a perfect digital replica so they can analyze without altering evidence. That replica includes your deleted messages and photos, hidden folders and backup partitions, app data like WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram logs, GPS history even if you turned off location services, metadata, timestamps, Wi-Fi connections, Bluetooth pairings. If you've ever plugged your phone into a computer, even briefly, that history may also be recoverable. The forensics team can reconstruct activity timelines to show who you contacted, when, and even where you were standing. The solution: once you know your device has been seized, the first thing you do is contact a lawyer immediately. Not tomorrow, not after the weekend. Right now. Why? Because your lawyer can quickly file a motion to preserve the chain of custody, a legal request forcing law enforcement to document every hand that touches your device and every copy that's made. If that chain is broken, if even one officer fails to log how the evidence was handled, it opens a door for your attorney to challenge the integrity of all data pulled from your device. In digital evidence, that's huge. Courts require that forensic evidence be authentic and unaltered. Any gap in the chain can make it inadmissible. Why it works: think of your lawyer as placing a legal shield around your data. The earlier they act, the stronger that shield. Prosecutors and digital forensic units rely heavily on the presumption that the seized data is accurate. But if your lawyer can show mishandling or lack of proper documentation, that presumption collapses, and so can the prosecution's entire digital case. That's why immediate legal contact isn't just smart, it's strategic protection of your future self. Tip number 4, never give police your passcode without a court order, and understand what that means. The problem: when police can't access your phone because it's locked, they'll often just ask you to unlock it to make things easier. Don't. Here's why. Unlocking your device isn't a small act. It's a legal confession in disguise. You're revealing something from your mind, your passcode, and under the Fifth Amendment, you have the right not to incriminate yourself.
Do you have to provide the police with a PIN to your mobile device? The answer to that is no. Now, it's not just because of a criminal offense, it's because of privacy.
Now, some people think they can outsmart this by entering the passcode themselves without saying it out loud. Doesn't matter. The act of unlocking is still testimonial because it confirms that you know the code and that you control the device. That admission can tie the data to you in court. The solution: if police request or demand that you unlock your device, calmly state, "I choose to exercise my Fifth Amendment right and will not provide or enter any passcode without a court order." That last part is critical. Without a court order, if law enforcement wants your passcode badly enough, they can apply for what's called a compelled decryption order. Whether that order is enforceable depends heavily on where you live. Different circuits across the U.S. interpret the Fifth Amendment differently. For example, in the 11th Circuit, United States versus Doe, courts have ruled that forcing someone to decrypt a device violates the Fifth Amendment. But in other jurisdictions, courts have said you may be compelled if the government already knows what specific files they're seeking. That's why you never, ever comply voluntarily. voluntarily. Your refusal isn't obstruction, it's your right to remain silent. Why it works. Once you assert that right, officers can't legally interpret your silence as guilt. That's Constitutional Law 101. And if they proceed anyway and somehow access your device through hacking, subpoena, or third-party tools, your attorney can challenge that access as a violation of due process and self-incrimination protections. Also note this, many agencies use forensic tools like Cellebrite and GrayKey that can bypass certain phone locks, but these tools have limits. The longer and more complex your passcode, the harder it is to crack. A simple 4-digit PIN can be broken in minutes. A 12-character alphanumeric code? Possibly never. Your passcode isn't just a password. It's a wall between your private life and the government's data vault. Build it strong. Tip number 5. Understand the data path, because your cloud isn't safe either. The problem, people assume, well, my phone's gone, but my stuff's safe. It's all backed up in iCloud or Google Drive. That's a dangerous misconception. When police seize your device, they're not just after the physical phone. They're after data access, and they know cloud storage is often where the real evidence lives. Here's how it usually plays out. They take your phone and obtain its device identifier, the IMEI, SIM number, Apple ID, or Google account. Then they serve a subpoena or search warrant directly to the cloud provider. Apple, Google, and Microsoft all have dedicated law enforcement response teams that handle these requests. With the right paperwork, they can hand over backups, including photos, messages, and app data, email logs and contact lists, calendar entries, notes, and stored files. If you've ever synced your device to the cloud, that data is fair game under a valid warrant. And the scary part, you won't always be notified immediately. Some warrants come with non-disclosure orders, meaning companies are forbidden to tell you. The solution: start using end-to-end encryption for anything sensitive. Apps like Signal, Proton Mail, or encrypted local storage solutions make it so that even if a company is subpoenaed, they can't turn over usable data because they themselves can't decrypt it. Also understand that two-factor authentication tied to your device can actually help law enforcement access more than you think. If they have your phone and your SIM card, they can trigger two-factor codes to open your accounts. To prevent this, use app-based authenticators like Authy or 1Password that are locked behind a separate code, not SMS. Why it works. This shifts the legal burden back onto law enforcement. Encryption doesn't break the law, it just enforces your right to privacy by design. And here's the irony. The same government agencies that warn citizens about cybersecurity threats also use the absence of encryption against them. Protecting your data isn't suspicious, it's smart citizenship. At this point, you know how to handle device seizures, how to respond to passcode demands, and how to protect your data even when it leaves your hands. The final stage is where most people panic, the interrogation and the friendly chat. The officer says, look, we already have your phone. If you just tell us what's on it, we can clear this up. That's not friendliness, that's strategy. Because the law isn't just about what's written on paper, it's about how you use it in real life when every instinct tells you to panic. Tip number 6. Never explain, speculate, or clear things up without counsel. The cops have your device. Maybe they've already started asking questions. Maybe they're telling you that cooperation will make things easier. This is the moment that breaks most people, because once you start talking, it's almost impossible to undo the damage. But if you understand how law enforcement uses your words against you, you'll never give away power again. The problem, police know that once they take your device, fear sets in. You start replaying every text, every photo, every search. You feel exposed. And that panic is what they're trained to exploit. They'll use what I call soft pressure tactics. We just need your side of the story. If you cooperate, it'll look better for you. We can probably return your phone faster if you just explain. Sounds harmless, right? But legally, this is a trap, because anything you say, even informal comments like, I don't think there's anything bad on there, can be twisted into constructive admissions. And if your device later reveals evidence of any unrelated issue, a misstatement on a form, a private text, a file you didn't even know existed, that prior helpful statement now becomes the bridge prosecutors use to tie you directly to that evidence.
And once you hand it over, it's theirs to spin. You think you're helping, but what you're doing is confirming. You don't need to tell your story right now. You need to protect it. Say less and lawyer up.
The solution, the only safe, lawful, and intelligent response in these moments is, I'm happy to cooperate through my attorney. Then stop talking, not one more word. You don't need to explain your innocence. In fact, innocent people often talk themselves into legal jeopardy because they over-explain. Silence isn't guilt, it's a strategy. And there's another layer here. When you you stay quiet, your lawyer can later challenge the context of any seized data. Maybe the texts were out of sequence. Maybe metadata was misread. Maybe timestamps got corrupted in the forensic process. That's all possible. But if you've already given a verbal story under pressure, your lawyer's flexibility is gone. Why it works. Police interrogations aren't about finding truth. They're about building admissible evidence. Once you involve your lawyer, all communication has to go through them. That forces law enforcement to play by procedural rules. And procedure, not emotion, is where most legal battles are won. Tip number 7, learn how to get your device back and when not to. Once police seize your phone or laptop, it can sit in an evidence locker for weeks or even months. Most people assume there's nothing they can do about it, but there are actually legal pathways to recover your device before a case is over. Under the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure Rule 41G and similar state laws, you can file a motion for return of property if 1. The seizure was unlawful, or 2. You no longer need to retain it as evidence. In plain English, if your device isn't directly tied to an active investigation, or if they've already copied the relevant data, your lawyer can petition the court for its return. But there's a strategic side. Sometimes it's better not to rush that process.
So if they find things like Facebook and text messages which support harassment, they're going to need that evidence for the trial if you go to trial, and you're not going to get that computer back perhaps until the end of the trial. You'd probably get it back in that scenario at the end of the trial because the computer wasn't used as a crime itself.
If the investigation is ongoing and your lawyer suspects the police haven't yet found what they were looking for, retrieving your device too early can trigger renewed attention. It's often smarter to let your attorney quietly monitor the situation and file at the optimal moment, after the prosecution's interest fades but before property destruction deadlines. The solution: always consult your lawyer before making any contact about retrieving seized property. They can file a written demand to ensure law enforcement either returns your device or confirms that it's being held under an active warrant or evidence order. That forces them to document everything and prevents indefinite retention. Why it works. Law enforcement agencies have limited storage and strict evidence management rules. By formally invoking your right to the return of property, you create an accountability paper trail. And if the device was taken unlawfully, this motion can also become the foundation for a civil rights lawsuit under 48 U.S.C., paragraph 1983 for unlawful seizure. In short, the moment you use a procedure, you stop being a victim and start being a participant in the legal process. Tip number 8, protect your digital privacy before an encounter ever happens. The problem: most people only think about their rights after an encounter, but in the digital age, true control starts before law enforcement ever shows up. Every device you own leaks information. Your phone syncs metadata to cloud servers, your laptop stores Wi-Fi networks, your smartwatch logs your movement and heart rate. Every smart object you use can tell a story about you. The legal system hasn't caught up to this reality yet, but you can.
You have Siri turned on so you can say, "Hey Siri," and it turns on. That phone is always listening to you.
Could be. I mean, is it possible? Is it capable of doing that? Yes.
The solution: take preemptive measures that make your devices less legally vulnerable. 1. Encrypt your devices fully. Both iPhones and Androids offer full disk encryption. Enable it. 2. Separate personal and professional data. Keep work devices and personal devices distinct. If one is seized, your entire digital life doesn't go with it. 3. Disable biometric unlocks. As we covered earlier, those can be compelled more easily than passcodes. 4. Audit your cloud backups. Turn off auto sync for sensitive folders. Encrypt before upload. 5. Use zero-knowledge services. These are platforms that literally cannot read your data, even under subpoena. And the most underrated one, digital hygiene. Regularly delete unnecessary files, old backups, and chat histories. You can't be incriminated by data that doesn't exist. Why it works. Proactive privacy isn't about hiding wrongdoing. It's about preventing misinterpretation. Once digital data enters the legal system, you lose control over context. A single joke text can be read as an intent. A cached location log can be read as surveillance. An unencrypted backup can be treated as a confession. When you reduce your data footprint, you reduce your risk footprint. Tip number 9, train your mind to stay calm and commanding during high-stress encounters. The problem: even the smartest person forgets the law when adrenaline spikes. Police encounters trigger a primal stress response. Your heart rate jumps, your body floods with cortisol, and your prefrontal cortex, the logical part of your brain, starts to shut down. That's biology, not weakness. And law enforcement officers know this. They're trained to use silence, tone, and posture to keep you off balance. If you react emotionally, you lose authority, and that can make the difference between a peaceful encounter and a disastrous one. The solution: practice what I call the calm, assertive loop.
First things first, stay calm. Do not resist the police. Do not argue with them. Do not try to run away. Those are all additional crimes you could end up being charged with.
It's a mental technique I teach clients for staying grounded. 1. Breathe deliberately. Slow your exhale to trigger the parasympathetic response. 2. Speak slowly and evenly. Speed equals panic. Calm equals control. 3. Use exact phrases. Memorize your lines. I don't consent to any searches. I would like to remain silent. I will cooperate through my attorney. 4. Avoid filler or emotion. No arguing, no sarcasm, no justifications. 5. Visualize control. Picture yourself as the calm center of a chaotic moment. These small physical actions stabilize your body chemistry, which restores your thinking clarity. You don't win by force, you win by composure. Why it works? In law, your tone is evidence. Body cam footage often becomes the silent witness that shapes how judges, juries, and investigators perceive you. If you remain calm, respectful, and precise, it strengthens your credibility and your legal defense. Even if everything else goes wrong, if your device is seized, if you're questioned, if you're charged, your demeanor will still testify that you were the composed, rational party, and that matters. Tip number 10. Turn legal awareness into a daily habit, not a reaction. The problem: most people only care about their rights when they're already in trouble, but by that point, the damage is done. The truth is, your relationship with law enforcement doesn't begin when an officer knocks on your door. It begins every day you use technology, communicate online, or store information digitally. The biggest legal vulnerability people have isn't ignorance, it's inconsistency. They know their rights, but they don't practice them until panic hits. And in that panic, fear overrides logic. The solution: make legal awareness part of your routine. That means regularly reviewing your device settings and privacy permissions, keeping your attorney's contact saved, memorized even, practicing how you'd respond to an unexpected search request, reading real cases, not headlines, to understand how the law evolves, following legitimate legal educators, not internet myths. Think of it like digital fitness. You don't wait for a crisis to start training. You build strength over time so that when the moment comes, you're already prepared. And this isn't paranoia, it's a responsibility. Every year, thousands of people face device searches over simple misunderstandings, data mislabels, location coincidences, synced content from family accounts. The law is powerful, but it's also slow to adapt. You have to be faster. Why it works: when legal awareness becomes instinct, you stay composed even under pressure. You don't scramble for answers, you already have them. You don't argue, you assert. You don't react, you respond strategically. The people who walk away from police encounters in control aren't lucky, they're trained. They've internalized their rights the way athletes internalize muscle memory. That's where your power lies, not just in knowing the law, but in living it. You now have the complete system. 1. Never consent without a warrant. 2. Distinguish seizure from search. 3. Know what happens to seized devices. 4. Never give up your passcode. 5. Understand the cloud trail. 6. Never talk without counsel. 7. Recover devices legally. 8. Protect privacy proactively. 9. Stay calm under pressure. 10. Make legal awareness a daily habit. This isn't just a checklist, it's a mindset. And if you practice it, you won't just survive police encounters, you'll command them. Everything like refusing voluntary searches, protecting your passcodes, invoking your rights. Staying calm comes down to one principle: control. The system counts on fear. It counts on you panicking, agreeing, and complying without question. Because the moment you stop asserting your rights, you stop being a citizen and become a subject. But knowledge turns fear into strategy. Well, that was it for today's video. But don't go anywhere because we've got plenty more heat for you. Just tap any of the cards on your screen right now and keep it locked.